Okay, well, look, I might just make a start. My name is Tatiana Rabeva, and I'm the Assistant Director of Postgraduate Specialisation here at the College of Law. I've been at the college for almost 10 years now. So I've seen the postgraduate specialisation programs grow quite a bit since this time that I've started, because it's commenced in 2008 and I obviously started in 2009. So quite a lot has happened, and it grew and changed so much. So that was obviously great to see. So look, what I will do is I will go through the information, and I'll also do a short demonstration of a subject, or what the subject actually looks like in the learning portal. And then at the end, there will be some time left to answer any questions that you might have. So what we will do today is I'll quickly go through the introduction of the program. We'll also look at the different awards and the practice areas, and what is the structure of our programs. We'll look at as to why study with us and what that study actually does look like. And I'll also quickly cover some more common credit provisions for the recognition of prior learning, with the question and answer session at the end. So as just mentioned, the first master's degree was introduced by the college in 2008, and that was the Master of Applied Law, Family Law. And then shortly after, the other three specialist masters have been introduced in in-house practice, commercial litigation, and wills and estates areas. Since that time, we have introduced a lot more of the practice areas, and the structure of the program has changed to allow for more flexibility for our students to ensure that they can customize the program around their needs. The college is now the second largest provider of postgraduate master's legal education in Australia. And in terms of who our students are, we have students from all over Australia, so in all of the different states and territories. And in terms of the, I guess, post-admission experience, the largest group of our students, they have up to 5 years of post-admission experience. And the second largest is the group that have 5 to 10 years of post-admission experience. So why choose us? Obviously, our adjunct teaching faculty consists of practicing solicitors, because it is a practical program. So practicing solicitors, practicing barristers, and we'll also sometimes have judges. So just to give you an example, this year we have the Honourable Peter Vickery, who is the lecturer for the advocacy subject that we're running. Subject matter experts who developed the content and the activities and the assessments in our subjects are also practicing solicitors or barristers, and obviously we rely on them quite a bit in terms of understanding and developing content and the activities and assessments that are relevant to practice. So one of the key differences that you will find, and one of the key differences for me as well when I went to law school too, is that the nature of the assessments that you complete is very practical. It's very different to the sort of standard law degree or the LLM program. So we'll also have curriculum advisory committees for each practice area. And the committees also consist of practicing solicitors and barristers, as well as judges. And the purpose of the advisory committees is to assist us with ensuring that the content is relevant to what happens in practice. And they're also able to guide us and help the college with ensuring that our curriculum reflects on the issues and matters that are of concern to practicing practitioners. During our subjects, students submit a number of activities and assessments, as I mentioned earlier, and they also receive personalized feedback from the lecturer on those, so that they can incorporate that feedback and improve as they go through the subject. There are 4 intakes a year. Students do not have to study each intake, but it is rather to allow the students to plan their study activities around their work and family commitments. Because obviously it would be quite a lot of time to spend to study each intake. And in terms of the amount of subjects per intake, we don't recommend to enroll in more than 2 subjects. For any new student, our recommendation is to start off with 1 subject, see how you go, you know, get your head around the expectations, what the assessments and activities look like, to understand the workload a little bit better, and then in the later intakes to make an assessment whether more than 1 subject is appropriate. Also, I'll mention here for anybody who might be interested in enrolling in our wills and estates or estate planning programs, that our subjects can be used for the purposes of becoming full members of STEP. So people need to have at least 2 years of relevant experience, and they need to complete 120 diploma level credits. Each of our wills and estates or estate planning subject is 30 diploma level credits. So obviously there are 4 that that students need to complete in total, and 2 of those 4 need to come from a list of core subjects. Okay, so I've got the streams, the postgraduate specialization streams here on the screen. So as you can see, there are quite a lot, and definitely changed since when the program was introduced. We have 2 different master's programs. So there is a Master of Applied Law, Family Law, and that program focuses, as the name would suggest, on family law subjects. And then we also have the Master of Laws, Applied Law, with a major in the practice areas that you've just seen on the previous screen. So in order to complete the Master of Laws Applied Law, which we refer to as LLM, students need to complete 8 subjects, and they're able to choose whether they want to complete single major, double major, or no major at all. So for the single major, students need to complete 3 subjects from that major, plus a capstone in that major, and then 4 elective subjects from any practice area. Students also have an option of doing the double major, so they pick 2 majors that are relevant to their careers and their practice. They complete 4 subjects in each of those majors, and then one of those 8 subjects needs to be a capstone from either of the 2 majors. And then we also have an option of no major. So again, if someone wants to customize the master's program to suit their needs, and they would like to complete a subject, several subjects from different practice areas to suit their careers and their practice, they can complete 7 subjects from any practice area, except for the family dispute resolution practice. And there is a reason for that, which I'll mention at a later point. And also they will need to complete a major project. Now you can see that the family dispute resolution practice major is mentioned here separately. So in order to complete this major successfully, students must complete 4 core subjects successfully, and they have to be completed in order. So students cannot start with FDR 3 before they complete FDR 2, for example. So it has to be completed in order. There is a work experience component. So it's 20 hours practicum that students must complete after they complete the 4 core subjects. And for the remaining 4 subjects, they can either complete them from any other practice area, or they can pick a second major and complete a second major as part of that. The other awards that we offer, as mentioned, Master of Applied Law, Family Law. So there are 5 core subjects and 3 elective subjects that students need to complete, and they all have to come from the family law practice area. We also have a couple of graduate certificates in applied law, and also several graduate diplomas of applied law. And so students need to complete 2 subjects for the graduate certificate and 4 subjects for the graduate diploma. And obviously the core and elective structure will depend on a particular award. We also have graduate diploma of family dispute resolution practice, and it is for people who either do not want to complete a master's, or who may not meet the entry requirements for the masters, or they just want to get registered as FDRPs. So in order to satisfy the requirements of this award, it is 4 core subjects, again completed in order, and 20 hours of practicum. So I won't go through all of the subjects that we offer, but I just thought I'll include a list of, just as an example, of the subjects that we offer, for example, in the business law and transactions. And I'll also use one of these subjects to give you the demonstration as to what the learning portal looks like for that subject. Now, I'll quickly go through the subject structure. So most of our subjects are offered online and they go for 12 weeks, except for the intake 4, because of the Christmas holidays, we're allowing for 1 week study free. So in length, it is 13 weeks. So there are 9 modules, which are covered in the first 9 weeks of the subject. Students are required to complete the readings. There is an interaction with the lecturer and the other students, and there may be a weekly activity that students need to complete. With the readings, there are 2 types of readings that are available to the students. So there is an essential resources list of readings. So the resources that students need to complete in order to assist them with working on their weekly activity, and also will assist them with the preparation of their assessments. And there is also the additional resources list that may be available. Those are optional, so students don't have to go through those, but if a topic is of a particular interest to the students, they can go through that list. In terms of the interaction, in intakes 1 to 3, students are able to participate in weekly teleconferences with their lecturer and also their fellow students. However, in intake 4, as mentioned before, there is Christmas holidays that are happening right in the middle of that intake. So to enable students and also the lecturer to enjoy the break, there are no weekly teleconferences that students need to attend, and the interaction with the lecturer and other students takes place via the discussion boards. And also, obviously, the lecturer will put up the weekly announcements, and in the intake 4, because there is no weekly teleconference, the lecturer may post a podcast, but that might focus on a particular topic which may be a little bit difficult, just to assist students with their understanding of the material. And then there may be an activity as part of the module. So there are actually three main types of the activities. There is a self-assessment activity. You don't have to complete or submit this activity, but that essentially just helps you with understanding where you're at in terms of understanding a particular topic. Not each module has a self-assessment activity, but you might have come across some that do. Then there is also a skill sharing activity, and that's usually a preparation of a handout or a PowerPoint presentation on a given topic. And then there are short writing activities. As part of that activity, students may be asked to prepare a memo to the partner, a case note, a file note, an email advice, or a letter of advice to the client on a particular matter. So with the weekly activities, there are not marks attached to them. However, students receive, in case of the short writing activities, individual feedback from the lecturer, which may be in a form of a few bullet points, just outlining as to what can be done more to improve the submission. And with the skill sharing activities, usually the feedback is provided as a group feedback. So the lecturer would review all of the submissions and then provide the class with the overall feedback on that activity. Then, so the 9 modules are done, so 9 weeks are done. The last 3 weeks then are focused on the assessments. So there are 3 different types of the assessments that students need to complete at the end of the subject. There is a written assessment, the oral assessment, and the final portfolio. So for the written assessment, in most of the subjects, students will be provided with a complex fact scenario, and they will be asked to complete a drafting activity. So just as an example, in one of our wills and estate subjects in family provision, students need to draft a position paper and also a memo to the partner that will go together with that position paper. For the oral assessment, it does consist of 2 parts. So for part 1, students will take one of the skill sharing activities, look at the feedback that was received by the class, make any changes, and then record a short video of themselves essentially doing that presentation. The lecturer will then review each submission and provide each student with a feedback. So for part 2 of the oral assessment, students will then draft a short memo to the lecturer in relation to the feedback that they have received on the part 1 of the oral assessment. And for the final portfolio, students will then need to look at the 4 activities that they have completed as part of their subject, plus complete a reflection activity, and submit them as part of their final portfolio that will be then assessed holistically. This is one of the reasons why we strongly encourage students to submit weekly activities in order to enable them to receive feedback from the lecturer, take that feedback on board, and then revise their submission and then submit it as part of their portfolio. In terms of the expected study time, our recommendation is that it is about 8 to 10 hours per week per subject. This is one of the reasons why we don't recommend enrolling in more than 2, and for, as I mentioned before, for new students, the recommendation is to enroll in 1 and just see how you go. Also, as mentioned earlier, the learning design is fairly similar in all subjects. So if you enroll in more than 1, all of the assessments in all subjects most likely will be on the same days. So it's quite a lot to complete in those last 3 weeks. As I mentioned before, most of our subjects are offered online. However, some of the subjects are offered on the intensive basis. For example, the advocacy subject that the judge is running for us this year is an intensive offering. And so, as the name would suggest, it is an intensive subject. It runs for 6 weeks instead of 12. So the same amount of learning needs to happen within the 6 weeks rather than 12 weeks. So the first 3 weeks, students will go through the first 3 modules and have the 3 weekly teleconferences with the lecturer. Students are also asked to go through the module notes for the remaining 6 modules before they come to the workshop in week 4. So the workshop for most subjects is 3 days face-to-face, and it is compulsory workshop. So if someone enrolls in the intensive subject, they must attend the workshop. There are subjects that may have 4 days of compulsory face-to-face, for example, our mediation subject. So during the workshop, the lecturer and the students, they go through the weekly activities, they draft them. So the same activities that would have been completed in the online offering on a weekly basis. And then in the last 2 weeks of the intensive subject, the students then submit the same assessment. So the written assessment, the oral assessment, and the final portfolio. Okay, so what I might do now is share a screen for the subject, for one of our subjects. So just bear with me. Okay, so this is what the learning portal, or we call it Canvas, looks like. So this is the home page of the employment law subject. So on the home screen, there is a bit of information about the subject and what the subject will cover. And then there are a number of links. So under the subject information, there will be learning objectives for this subject, some information about the assessments and some other relevant information. Then there are links to all of the modules. So there are 9 modules there, and just a link also to the assessments. So I'll have a look at one of the modules. I might do module 6. So each module home screen page will have, again, a little blurb about what that module will focus on and the module learning outcomes. And then there you will see the sort of a list of things that you need to complete to successfully complete this module. So the first step would be to review the resources. And as I mentioned before, you will find the resources under the essential resources heading, and that contains all of the resources that you will need to read and review in order to ensure that you can successfully complete your activity and the assessment later on. And there is also additional resources list of resources that students might find useful if they're interested in that particular topic, but they are optional. And so I'll show you what the module notes look like, because our suggestion is that when you come to this screen, go through the module notes first, and then you can continue with the rest of the essential resources, but it is obviously completely up to you. So this is what the module notes look like. So there are module notes for each module in each subject. The length of the module notes will depending on the topic within the subject. So this one I think is 10 pages. Sometimes you'll find there are 5 pages, 7 pages. So it will depend on the topic. And so you've got all of the essential information there for you to go through, read and review before you participate in the interaction with the lecturer and also attempt to complete your activity. So can I go back? Yes. Okay, so the next step is to complete the activity. This is the writing activity for this module. Students are asked to draft an email based on the scenario. So in some of the activities, you will be provided with a short fact scenario that you need to consider and then draft, depending on what it may be. In this case, it is an email that students would send to their co-directors. And so then we have the self-assessment activity. So as I mentioned, those are not compulsory. You don't have to submit them, but it is a really great tool for you to, I guess, just see how you go and check your understanding of a given topic. So as part of this self-assessment activity, students are provided with a poorly drafted agreement, and they're invited to have a go at trying to redraft that agreement. So I'll show you what it looks like very quickly. So this is what, once you click on the link, this is what you will see. So that's a Word version, and then you can obviously try and have a go at redrafting these as you see fit. Okay, now I'll quickly go back. So after you've done that, you're also then given a link to download a revised version so that you can review and self-assess as to how you went with that. So let me just click on this. And so there is a PDF, and then in blue, you can see the revised versions with some of the little notes as to what can be done better to ensure that it is a better drafted agreement. Okay, and then if I go back, you can then participate in the interaction. So as I mentioned before, in intakes 1 to 3, there is a weekly teleconference, but in the intake 4, the interaction takes place via the discussion board. So from this page in the intake 4, you can click on the discussion, and then that will give you the list of all of the discussion boards for each module. You just need to pick the one that you're after and participate there. While I'm also in Canvas, I might as well just show you announcements. So as mentioned before, lecturers might post weekly announcements each week. Mind you though that this is a live subject that finished in the intake 2, so there are actually some real announcements from the lecturer. And so the lecturers might use the announcements to, a quick announcement to let students know that their feedback is available, or to provide group feedback on the skill sharing activities, or just a weekly announcement for a particular module where the lecturer will give you a sort of an overview of what is being covered that week and just focus the students' attention to some particular aspects of that module. Students are also able to communicate privately with their lecturer. They can write emails through Canvas. So on the left-hand side, there is an inbox. One click into mine, because there might be some emails in there, but so all students and lecturers, they have this inbox. So you can send direct emails to the lecturer via this inbox there. Okay. just go back to the PowerPoint presentation. So as I mentioned, because it is mostly our subjects are offered online, so you can access the learning portal anywhere and anytime, regardless whether you're in Australia or overseas. And I'll just quickly go through the most common credit provisions for the recognition of prior learning. And before I start, I'll just mention that there are usually 2 types of credit that someone can receive on the basis of the studies that they have completed in the past. There is a specified credit and unspecified credit. So in a nutshell, if a study that you have completed, that we can match that study in terms of the learning objectives and the material that was completed with one of our own subjects, so there is a substantial overlap, then we will provide students with a specified credit for that subject. If if there is no substantial overlap, but obviously, the study still needs to be recognized, then we will grant the unspecified credit towards the program. And so with unspecified credit, it is counted towards electives. And what it does is, if let's say you receive 2 subjects unspecified credit, it means that instead of 8 subjects, you need to complete 6. You still need to complete the major requirements if you're enrolled in the major, but for your electives, instead of 4, you only need to complete 2. So if you have completed Graduate Diploma of Legal Practice, so the PLT program at the college within the past 10 years, you can apply to receive 2 subjects unspecified credit for that study. If your PLT was completed at another provider, also within the past 10 years, then you can apply to receive 1 subject unspecified credit. National accredited mediators are able to receive specified credit towards DRP4 mediation subject. And any student that completed Graduate Diploma of Family Dispute Resolution Practice is also able to receive some credit. Now, the amount of credit that can be granted for this type of study will depend on whether the award was completed at the college or at another provider, and also whether the applicant is a registered FDRP. There is also a provision for someone who has recently completed the college's LPMC course that they may be able to receive specified credit for one of our subjects. Now, obviously, people complete the postgraduate studies in law at other providers. So we always invite, if someone has completed some subjects at another provider, and it doesn't really matter whether the award was completed or not, to send through their documentation so that we can assess on case-by-case basis as to any credit, whether that is specified or unspecified, can be granted for that study. Okay, so I've got the intake dates here. The intake 4 will start on the 18th of November, and that's the intake that does not have the weekly teleconferences. And I've also got the 2020 dates here as well to help people, I guess, plan. With the FDRP, unfortunately, because our second intake for the year has already started, and due to the prescribed nature of subjects having to, where you must complete the subjects in order. So the next available intake will be in February in 2020. Okay, so I think we got to the end of the session, but now if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A section on your screen to type up the question. If you have any questions after the session finishes, please feel free to schedule a one-on-one chat with Renata Fischer, our enrollments officer. You can do that through the website. And also in terms of the enrollment, you can also enroll online on our website. I've got the links there available. Okay, so I've got a really good question here as to what is a capstone project. So the purpose of the capstone project is to bring together all of the knowledge and skills that you have acquired as part of your major. So, and this is why students are required to complete 3 subjects in their major first before they enroll in their capstone, because in that subject, it is effectively assessment heavily assessment-based subject where students submit assessments and lecturers provide them with individual and continuous feedback throughout the intake on their assessment. Okay, so I've got another good question here in terms of the cost. So it is $3,300 per subject. Yeah. Okay. Also got a question here. Someone has 2 kids and works full time, and how many subjects should that person take? So, very good question. Again, as mentioned before, our strong recommendation is that people start off with just enrolling in 1. We strongly suggest not to enroll in more than 2 per intake. And as mentioned before, because all of the assessments will fall on the same date. So managing more than 2 subjects in a given intake with all of the assessments falling due at the same time can be a little bit difficult, taking into consideration, the busy practice work commitments and family commitments. Okay, so I've got a question here. Can the fees be claimed on HICS? So I imagine that fee help. So if that's the case, yes. So students can apply to pay via fee help. In order to do that, they need to be enrolled in an award. So if they're enrolled in a master's or graduate diploma, they can pay for their subjects via fee help, and students can complete all of the necessary forms for that during their online enrollment process. Hope that helps. Okay, I also have a question here as to what is the difference between the Master of Applied Law, Family Law, and the LLM majoring in Family Law. So with the Master of Applied Law, Family Law, all of the subjects that students complete, they're all in family law practice area. There is also a core and elective subjects requirement. So if in all of our majors as part of the LLM, students don't have to stick to the core and elective subjects requirements, unless we're talking about FDRP. If they do any 3 plus a capstone in family law, Master of Applied Law, there are 5 core subjects that students must complete, and then 3 elective subjects. So, and the post-nominal is also different. So for masters, it is LLM and in the brackets applied law. And for the specialized family law, it is MAP law and in the brackets family law. Okay, also a very good question as to what are the requirements to be eligible to enroll. So in order to enroll in our master's program, students must have a law degree. So during the enrollment process, students will be asked to submit evidence that they do have a law degree. So it can be a certified colored copy of either a graduation certificate, an academic transcript, a practicing certificate, or an admission certificate. We've got a graduate certificate in applied law for legal practice and innovation that does not require people to have a law degree. So any undergraduate degree is sufficient. And also with the FDRP program, due to the nature of the program, students without the law degree may be able to enroll in the graduate diploma, but if they don't have a law degree, then they need to have a degree in psychology or social work or some other related professions. Okay, so I've got a question here. For the graduate diploma, applied law, 2 subjects, are there 2 core subjects that have to be completed, or can you just choose any 2 subjects from the relevant practice area? Okay, so for the graduate diploma of applied law, it is 4 subjects that must be completed, and the graduate certificate, it is 2 subjects. In terms of the core subjects, look, it will heavily depend on the award. So for example, and I'll use graduate diploma as an example, in the graduate diploma of applied law in-house practice, there are 2 core subjects that are prescribed, and the other 2 subjects can be completed from the list of the in-house practice subjects. But for the graduate diploma of applied law in wills and estates. There are 3 core subjects, and then there is 1 elective. But the electives must come from that practice area. So it's not like it is with the LLM, where you can do 4 subjects in 1 practice area and your electives can come from any practice areas. So with the graduate diploma, all of the subjects have to come from that practice area. I hope that helps. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, so I received clarification on the question. So the question was about graduate certificate in wills and estates. Look, we don't offer graduate certificate in wills and estates at the moment, but if we were, then yes, the subjects would have had to come from the wills and estates. And judging by what our other practice areas is, it depends on what the degree, I guess, will be approved as. So obviously, because we're talking hypothetically here, you will find, I think, with one of our graduate certificates, let's say in the legal practice and innovation, students can complete any 2 subjects from the list. But for the government and public sector law, I believe it is 1 core subject being foundations of government and public sector law, and then the second subject will be from the list of government and public sector law subjects. I hope that helps to clarify. It is just unfortunate that we don't have the graduate certificate in wills and estates at the moment. But then for the graduate diploma wills and estates, which I believe we do have, there are 3 core subjects, and then there is 1 elective from the rest of the wills and estates subjects. Okay, so I've got another really good question, whether someone can transition from a graduate diploma to the LLM. Yes, definitely. So you can enroll in the graduate diploma. And then, you know, halfway through, or even once you graduate, you can then, obviously, if you decide to proceed to the LLM before you graduate with the graduate diploma, you will need to let our team know. They'll be able to transfer you. And if you graduate, then you'll need to return and essentially start the master's again, but you will be provided with the credit to recognize the subjects that you will have completed as part of your graduate diploma. Now, I should also mention that it works other way around as well. So if you enroll in the LLM, for example, in family law, majoring in family law, and then you complete the subjects that would meet the requirements of a graduate diploma, so the core and elective subjects, and then you know, things happen, you know, you decide not to continue with the master's at this point in time, you can exit early with the graduate diploma as long as you have satisfied the core and elective structure of that. So I hope that helps. Okay, so I've got a question here. Are the subjects in wills and estates or estate planning based just in New South Wales law or WA? So with the wills and estates, we've got 3 streams, New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. So we don't have the WA stream. Some of our subjects, they reference the legislation from other states. So there will be a comparative table in there that will have, you know, it will talk about a particular section of, let's say, New South Wales Succession Law Act, and then it will have a table as part of the module notes that will then provide students with what the equivalent of that section will be in the state, the relevant state legislation. with the estate planning, they're offered on the national basis. So we don't have separate streams. So all students are enrolled like in the same subject. And the content that we provide is national, so it is applicable to everybody. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay. Okay, so there is a question that just came through. Is an intensive in advocacy law? So the advocacy subject that we currently are running is offered on the intensive basis only because it's obviously hard to teach advocacy, court advocacy, you know, in the online environment. So that subject is only offered as an intensive where students must attend the 3-day workshop. So, and as mentioned before, the Honourable Kiddo Vickery is a lecturer for that subject this year, and we had another judge last year who was also lecturing in this subject. That helps. Okay. Also just put some contact information on the screen here. So if you have any other question after the end of this session, please feel free to contact our office, and our client services team will be able to answer any of the other questions that you might have. Let me just quickly see if there is any more. So unless there are any other questions, thank you so much for your time, for joining me for these sessions. As I said, if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact us. And I hope to see you enrolled in our programs. Thank you.